Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. You are listening to Certified Yapper Girl. This is where I yap, you listen. So without further ado, let's get into today's topic. So today we're going to be discussing Rue from Euphoria and specifically about her as a character, some of her motivations and struggles, as well as the stylistic choices that are made when she's on camera throughout the entire show. More specifically through season 1. If you guys want, I can do a separate video for season 2, but there's a lot to unpack in season 1 already, so yeah, let's just get into it. In HBO's Euphoria, Rue Bennett emerges as a deeply complex and troubled protagonist whose characterization speaks volumes about the teenage trauma, addiction, and the quest for identity in a modern world awash with overstimulation. Portrayed by Zendaya, Rue's depiction is at the heart of Euphoria's exploration of mental health, addiction, and emotional chaos. Her motivations, struggles, and inner demons are conveyed not only through exceptional writing and acting, but also through intricate camera work and stylistic choices that help the audience grasp the depths of her pain and confusion. From the onset, Rue is presented as an unreliable narrator, a drug addict who recently returned from rehab. Her unreliability is crucial to the aspects of her characterization because it underscores the ambiguity of her perceptions and decisions. She narrates the life story with a mix of humor, detachment, and ultimately despair, blurring the lines between truth and her drug-induced distortions. Ultimately, Rue is haunted by the loss of her father, which is an event which I think people don't discuss enough when they speak about Rue as a character. Her struggle with addiction becomes the primary lens through which the audience understands her motivations. Her desire to escape reality, numb grief, and silence her inner turmoil. These conditions, combined with the trauma of losing her father, set the stage for her drug abuse. One of the most pivotal moments in Rue's story is when she's trying oxycodone for the first time while lying in bed with her dying father. The emotional weight of this scene is heightened by the show's use of close-up shots, which capture the desperation in Rue's eyes as she seeks to relieve from the overwhelming grief that she's experiencing. This moment establishes a critical pattern. Rue's use of drugs is not just about escaping reality, but it's about silencing the internal chaos that comes with losing a loved one. The way the scene is framed, intimate and dimly lit, reflects the warmth and pain she associates with her father. This moment of vulnerability actually marks the beginning of Rue's escape into addiction, a place where she can silence the emotional turmoil that has consumed her since childhood. By juxtaposing these memories with the chaotic and often frantic scenes of her drug use, Euphoria shows how Rue's addiction becomes both a response to her internal pain and a self-destructive coping mechanism. Now, the use of flashbacks is extremely critical in deepening our understanding of Rue's character. In addition to moments with her father, we see younger versions of Rue navigating a life full of medications and mental health struggles. This establishes a pattern that will follow her into adulthood, where she's constantly looking for relief. Now, whether this relief is through prescribed pills or illicit substances, the need is constantly there. The cinematic choices is frequently cutting between Rue's past and present, and this serves as a powerful reminder that her addiction is not just a current problem, but a consequence of a lifetime of unmanaged emotions and untreated trauma. Rue's internal conflicts are central to her character arc. She constantly vacillates between self-destruction and a desire to change. Her addiction serves as both a crutch and a metaphorical prison. In Euphoria, Rue's constant vacillation between her self-destruction and a desire to change, to me at least, is perfectly illustrated in a scene where she returns from rehab and her mom demands to know where she's been, and then says that she has to take a drug test. Now, this moment, in my opinion, again, encapsulates the duality of Rue as a character. Someone who knows what's at stake but is unable to break free from the grip of her addiction. When Rue's mom asks her to take the drug test, Rue quickly resorts to manipulating the people around her to fulfill her own selfish needs. The preparation and deception indicate her cunning and ultimately her desperation to maintain the illusion that she's on the path to recovery to the people who she loves, even though we know as the audience that she's far from it. This scene is not just about Rue's deficit as a character, but it's also about the cyclic nature of addiction. The way the show moves from Rue using the fake urine to the flashback of her overdose underlines the internal battle she's feeling inside. Despite the overwhelming evidence of the destruction that drugs have caused in her life, Rue still chooses the temporary high, reinforcing her tendency towards self-destruction. The memory of Gia finding her should act as a motivator for her to stay clean, but instead we see how this sort of coexists with her drug use, as if these two realities, one, a hope for redemption, and self-sabotage, exist in tandem with each other within her mind. Rue's motivations are frequently driven by the need for immediate emotional relief, whether this is through drugs or relationships. This conflict is especially evident in her romantic involvement with Jules, a character who becomes Rue's emotional anchor and drug substitute. Rue is drawn to Jules not just because of her romantic interest, but because Jules represents a form of escape, a way for her to channel her emotional dependency into another person rather than drugs. Rue's attachment to Jules, however, is as complicated and intense as her addiction, rooted in that same deep fear of abandonment and unresolved grief over her father's death. When Rue meets Jules, the camera often lingers on her face, capturing the awe and hope that Rue feels in Jules' presence. She sees in Jules someone who can fill the emotional void left by her father's passing, someone she can cling to when her sobriety becomes unbearable. Another important facet of Rue's characterization is her perpetual state of disassociation. She frequently retreats into her mind, creating fantasies and reimagining situations to cope with her surroundings and what she's feeling. The disassociation is both a symptom of her trauma and an illustration of her disconnection from reality. Her deadpan delivery, which I admit I love, is often punctuated by sarcastic humor and really masks the depth of her emotional despair she's feeling, showing a character who is outwardly indifferent yet inwardly turbulent. The success of Rue's characterization is not only due to the writing and Zendaya's performance, but also the show's visual style, which plays a critical role in representing Rue's inner state. The camera often mirrors Rue's disorientation and stability. For instance, when Rue is high, the camera adopts fluid and often erratic motions that reflect her altered perception of reality. The close-up shots of Rue's face during moments of vulnerability help to externalize her internal chaos, forcing the viewers to confront the rawness of her pain. Now, as for her motivations, Rue's motivations are rooted in her unresolved grief, trauma, and desire for control. Her drug use is an escape from the overwhelming feelings she's experiencing, both the pain of losing her father and the general angst of adolescence. Rue's desire to numb herself is evident in her continued relapse, even when she acknowledges the self-destructive nature of her actions. Her motivations often clash with her aspirations. Now, while she longs for sobriety and a normal life, her addiction continually undermines her progress. Rue's internal battle between wanting to be a better person for her family, especially her younger sister Gia, and succumbing to her drug dependency is a central tension that drives her actions. Rue's deep fear of abandonment becomes a central theme for her with all her interactions with Jules. She sees Jules not only as a potential romantic partner, but also someone she can use as an emotional lifeline, someone whom she can anchor her sobriety to. However, the dynamic quickly becomes unsustainable as Jules feels trapped by the responsibility of having to be Rue's emotional crutch. The The cinematography emphasizes this imbalance, using tight and claustrophobic shots when Rue and Jules are together, conveying a sense of suffocation. Meanwhile, wider, more expansive shots are used in scenes where Jules is with other characters, symbolizing her desire for freedom. Throughout the series, Rue's growing dependency on Jules mirrors her previous dependency on drugs. Her emotional reliance on Jules reaches a breaking point when Jules, overwhelmed by the pressure, seeks solace somewhere else. In the final episode, Jules' detachment is made evident during the school dance, where instead of being present with Rue, she locks herself in a bathroom, texting Anna and taking pictures. The camera lingers on Rue's face as she realizes that Jules, despite her declarations of love, is not ready for the deep emotional connection Rue is so desperately willing to give. The pivotal moment highlights the key flaw in their relationship. Rue is seeking stability and love, while Jules is still in the process of discovering her own self-identity and can't offer Rue the emotional security she needs. Another thing that I find really, really interesting about Euphoria is the cinematography techniques that's used in Rue's characterization. The visual style of Euphoria plays a crucial role in shaping the audience's understanding of Rue's inner world. Director Sam Levinson employs an array of camera techniques. The angles, the movement, the color grading, all of this is used to provide insight into Rue's mental state. The camera often mirrors Rue's disorientation and unreliability through erratic motions, distorted visuals, and moments of surrealism. One of the most striking techniques is the use of manipulation of perspective. Force the audience to confront Rue's pain head-on, emphasizing the depth of her emotional turmoil and forces us to empathize with her. The rawness of her expressions, often framed in extreme close-ups, reveal the layers of her internal struggle. In contrast, wide shots are used in scenes where Rue feels isolated, small, or overwhelmed by her environment, visually reinforcing her sense of alienation and helplessness, of the grief and emotional burden that Rue carries with her at all times. Rue's emotional state. Euphoria makes heavy use of neon lighting and stark contrast, reflecting on the intensity of Rue's feelings and the chaotic world she inhabits. Bright, saturated colors often dominate scenes where Rue is under the influence, while darker, muted tones characterize moments of despair or withdrawal. The dichotomy between bright and dark colors mirror Rue's oscillation between fleeting highs and deep lows, emotions of passion, anger, and danger, all elements of Rue's character arc. Passion is evident in her deeply emotional response to life, love, and loss. Anger simmers just beneath the surface, directed at the world for taking her father, and at herself for not being able to cope without substances, remaining in the midst of chaos, to loom over her continually as her reliance on drugs threatens her well-being, relationships, and her future.
Anyway, I'm gonna
Rue
go.
is the heavy symbolism that is used throughout the show, which parallels her addiction that Rue wears throughout Euphoria and the significant symbolism that it holds, particularly considering her emotional journey and the character's complex relationship with addiction at the train station. Rue walks home alone, defeated by her fear and emotional instability. The scene leads to one of the most visually striking and emotional moments of the entire series, a musical dream sequence where Rue is still wearing the red sweater and experiences her relapse. This final sequence is rich with symbolism, the blending of reality and surrealism to emphasize the Sicilic nature of her addiction and the emotional turmoil she can't escape. The musical sequence is choreographed like a slow descent into chaos, set to the haunting song of Alphorus by Labyrinth. As Rue is surrounded by her family in flashbacks and memories of her father and surreal imagery, it becomes clear that this moment is not just about the physical act of relapsing, but a representation, if you will, of her mental and emotional surrender. She falls back into the comfort of addiction just as she holds on to her father's sweater, because it feels safer than confronting the pain head on. The red sweater makes an appearance in this sequence for its entirety, visually reminding the audience of her grief and its role in her downfall. Rue's relapse is simply not about wanting the high. It's about wanting to numb the overwhelming emotion she has carried since her father died. The sweater symbolizes the weight of that loss, a burden Rue is still unable to release. The dreamlike quality of the scene, with its surreal choreography and emotional weight, pulls the audience in deeper into Rue's internal struggle, allowing us to visually see the fractured psyche as she succumbs once more to the lure of drugs.
It may not matter what I think.
Now, cinematically, this sequence uses slow motion, dim lighting, and exaggerated movements to reflect the surreal and hypnotic pull of addiction. Rue's body is being lifted and moved almost like a puppet, showing that she's no longer in control of her actions or her desires. The disorienting camera work combined with the heavy beat of the music creates a sense of emotional overload, mirroring the chaos Rue feels inside. Her father's presence is in the sequence, and albeit fragmented memories, it further illustrates the tight hold his grief still has on her. The red sweater clings to her body and remains tethered to both her father's memory and the addiction that now sadly defines her life. The sequence ends with Rue falling, as if being consumed by her relapse. The fall is significant. It is a visual manifestation of the Sicilic trap that she finds herself in. Just when she begins to pull herself back up, through the efforts to staying sober or her connection to Jules, she inevitably falls back into addiction. The descent is both literal and metaphorical, capturing the essence of how addiction strips away any progress or stability Rue tries to build. In this moment, the red sweater is now heavy with all it represents, and it becomes not just a symbol of love and loss, but it really captures her inability to move forward. Rue Bennett is a complex and potent character, and her exploration of struggles and addiction and trauma and searching for identity make Euphoria what it is. It is centered around her for a reason. Her motivations are deeply tied to her desire to escape her emotional pain, leading to her destructive patterns of behavior. However, what truly sets Rue's character apart is the way how the show uses cinematic techniques to immerse the audience into her fractured reality. Through the use of disorienting camera angles, fluid movements, and close-ups, and vibrant color schemes, they have done an excellent job of painting a vivid picture of Rue's inner world, and also a phenomenal job of bringing us into it. Rue is simply not just a victim of her circumstances. She is deeply human. She's a flawed character whose journey offers a stark look into the impact of addiction and a quest for emotional survival. I really do hope that we do get to see more of Rue in season 3, and I would love to see what the writing team, or I should say, Sam Levinson, does with her as a character. Thank you so much for listening to this Yap session, and comment down below if you want to see more. Thank you guys. Bye.